We're here to announce an 85-count indictment against Anthony Sowell, who was responsible for Cleveland's most heinous crimes. First, let me recognize Cleveland Police Chief Michael McGrath and our Cuyahoga County Sheriff Bob Reed to my right. I also want to acknowledge the good work of our coroner Frank Miller and his staff for their hard work in identifying the remains of the victims. A Cuyahoga County grand jury has returned an indictment against this monster for brutalizing 3 women, 2 who've been raped, and murdering 11 more. Sowell preyed upon vulnerable females, luring them into his house. Once inside, he tormented them, threatened them, and assaulted them. He murdered 11 of them. Sowell is indicted on charges of attempted murder, attempted rape, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and felonious assault for the crime he committed against a 40-year-old female on December 8th in his home on Imperial Avenue. When the victim entered his home, he punched her in the face, choked her, and attempted to rape her. He then robbed her. She fought back and was able to escape. Sowell has been indicted on charges of attempted murder, rape, kidnapping, and felonious assault for the crime committed against a 36-year-old female on September 22, 2009, in his home. He became agitated and violent with the victim when she declined his advances. He raped her and then choked her with a cord until she was unconscious. Sowell was indicted on charges of attempted murder, rape, kidnapping, and felonious assault for the crime against a 51-year-old female on October 20th, 2009, in his home. He invited the victim to his house, and after some time, she left. After she got outside, he lured her back into the house. When she entered the house, he grabbed her and choked her. He forced her upstairs and raped her. As she was attempting to escape the second-floor window, Sowell tried to pull her back inside. When his attempts failed, he pushed her out the window. As she laid unconscious in the alley, he then grabbed her and pulled her back in the house. EMS arrived and rescued her. He threatened his victims not to contact the police. He has been indicted as a repeat violent offender and on sexually violent predator specifications for his 1990 conviction, for which he served 15 years. In that case, the facts are eerily similar to the ones in these most recent crimes. In 1989, he lured a 21-year-old female into his home on Page Avenue in East Cleveland. He choked her, raped her. He then gagged her and tied her hands and feet. That victim was able to escape by crawling out onto the porch and screaming for help. Fortunately, all these women survived. For the murder of 11 females, Anthony Sowell has been indicted on 11 counts of aggravated murder charges with mass murder specifications, in addition to charges for kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. On October 29, 2009, Cleveland police executed a search warrant in connection with the September 22, 2009 rape. Upon executing that warrant, Cleveland police discovered 2 bodies on the 3rd floor of Sowell's home. One of the victims was strangled. The other victim has yet been unidentified or undetermined. The next day, police discovered 4 more victims. Using a belt, he strangled a 3rd victim found under the basement steps. He strangled a 4th victim on the 3rd floor. Using an electrical cord, he strangled a 5th victim found buried in the backyard. Her hands were tied. Using a rope, he strangled a 6th victim found in the crawl space on the 3rd floor. Her hands were tied behind her back. On November 3, 2009, police found 5 more victims. He left the skull of a 7th victim in a bucket found in the basement. He strangled the 8th, 9th, and 10th victims and buried them in the backyard. The death of the 11th victim, who was found buried in the backyard, is undetermined violence, and her ankles and wrists were bound. For these victims and their families, for the Mount Pleasant community, and for this county, we will seek justice. These charges today make this case a capital murder case pursuant to Ohio law, and we are seeking the death penalty. For any other victims who have not sought out help yet, I urge you to call the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. They have set up a special Imperial Avenue crisis line, which is 216-339-9664. I want to repeat that, 216-339-9664. The center has a licensed therapist answering the phone and will provide confidential support, information, and referrals to those victims seeking assistance. I'll take questions.
What was the motive? What motivated this man? Sex, power, whatever?
You know, it's always going to be hard for individuals to try to get into the mind of a killer like this. And it would appear that sex is part of it, of course, but probably the thrill of killing these women was part of it too.
What does the mass murder specification mean?
I mean, multiple bodies were killed in a common course of conduct. So, in a course of conduct of raping and brutalizing these women, killing them.
You've talked about this before, but can you mention what your plans are for going for the death penalty?
Well, we're going to move forward. He's already been indicted with death penalty specifications. We think we have some pretty good evidence. The Cleveland Police Department has pulled together what we need to move forward on. I brought in what I believe are two of the best prosecutors in the state to try this case, and we'll let the legal system take its pace. But certainly, we're going to put on the very best case we have.
When could the trial start?
It's going to depend on the judge. Certainly, some judges will get us in there in 6 months. Some will be a year and a half. So it just depends.
Bill, can you run through again how those victims were found? You talked about some of them were strangled with a cord. Some of them were. I'm looking for maybe, I don't know if you have it, a summation. Were they all strangled with objects, or some of his hands, or do we know? Or if you can run through again what you mentioned earlier.
I think I could say generally that these women were sexually abused and strangled. Some with cords, some with not, and others you can't determine.
Already, some discussion. Of course, they might do psych tests. How does that play into the fact that you're seeking the death penalty with all these cases and varying sorts?
Well, in a case like this, which is obviously so heinous that you've got to always have to be concerned about those issues being raised. But based on what we know about some of the victims and some of the things he's done, he knew that what he was doing was wrong at the time he was doing it, and so we're satisfied we're going to be able to move forward on that issue.
He's been a model prisoner to this point. He has had no visitation other than his attorney, although we've had a number of requests for visitation, but he has declined visitation.
Isn't he going to have any threats from any of the other prisoners?
We have not. That has not been reported to us. It is not.
Sheriff, is he in the general population, or are there any special?
He is in an isolated unit.
A request from the media or from family and friends?
There's been a request from the media and family and friends.
But he's personally denied them.
That's correct.
Is he receiving psychiatric treatment at all?
That I don't know.
Medical treatment?
That I do not know.
Can you comment on the remains of the rest of that body from the skull, from the one victim? I mean, anything you can tell us about? Is the search continuing for that? Is he helping you guys find it?
The most important thing I can tell you about the skull that was recovered in the basement is that we do have DNA from the skull, but we do not have any matching DNA, and we do have a request out to anybody in Northeast Ohio who has a missing person relative to that profile or that age to please contact the county coroner's office.